caused by the financial crisis, and most of America was bemoaning the loss of Main Street USA and worried about small businesses, kind of similar to how they are now. And most people in the room were thinking about what products we could sell them, credit cards, loans, bank accounts, what could help from a place like American Express. And a wonderful team had a brighter idea of what small businesses really needed was foot traffic. And born out of that period and that need was Small Business Saturday. We're now ironically, just hit our 10-year anniversary on that, and we find ourselves in a new crisis. We've been planning for about a year for something coming up in the generic, and who would have known that what would hit us would be something health-related, which led to a lot of interesting things when it comes to creative development, a process that's bred on collaboration and trust. And for the first time in our careers, at least, we find ourselves in a crisis that uniquely has us apart. Normally when things go wrong, we surround ourselves with friends and family. I'm sure we all have memories of being around a conference table with each other, figuring out a tough problem like that team in '08, figuring out Small Business Saturday and developing that idea and launching it. Now we're all on Zoom meetings. And how do you create a trusted environment in a setting like this is the topic for today. And so with that, I'm going to ask the first question, which is to Erin. What opportunities surprise you that have come out of this so far for Waze?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Clayton. And thanks, Piers and team. I think this is a really great opportunity to find connection, as Clayton said, at a time where connection seems a little bit more difficult. So thrilled to be here. Waze is interesting. So for those of you guys who do use Waze, we're all about getting people to where they need to go in the most efficient and effective way. And I think that most people probably think about Waze in the ways that is this navigation app, and really powered by amazing technology. But what a lot of people don't know is behind that technology is also a community of hundreds of thousands of volunteer map editors around the globe who really are responsible for making sure that your local or hyper-local community, your map is updated real time all the time. So I think what's been amazing for that coming out of this is that we have a crisis response team who typically works with when there's a natural disaster, fires, floods, tornadoes, things like that. But we've connected the dots with our volunteer map editors, and we're working together to add critical information to the Waze map. So to keep drivers informed of updates and restrictions in their local area due to what's going on, but also to connect them to vital resources. So whether it's testing centers, screening centers, hospitals, really critical food sources. And I think that what's been amazing is that we are now inviting our partners. So we work with the public sector, we work with the private sector, and we're connecting all of those partners and government officials from around the globe to provide much needed data sources and information, connecting them directly with our map editors. And by sort of bringing together this global network, we're really hoping to provide people with information that can help keep them safe during this challenging time. So while all of these pieces always existed inside of Waze, we always use them for different reasons, and connecting them directly with each other, I think has been a huge opportunity for Waze and hopefully for anyone who uses Waze.
Well, as a Waze loyalist, I've used that. Your government partnership or government tools have been useful for me in avoiding speed traps in the past, but I'm grateful if they can help guide me to medical care in the future. That's a great way to repurpose utility there. Alain, what are you hearing from clients? What kind of things in the last 14 days have you been tackling that you didn't expect to 15 or 18 days ago?
No, it's a good question. Sylvain Labs is a strategy and design consultancy, of course, and we develop product ideas and brand approaches for our clients in all sorts of different industries. And what we found the last couple of weeks is where clients are looking to us to sort of channel what people are feeling. So like Erin just talked about, there are a number of assets that Waze has. How do you architect it and put it together in a way that's really true to what Waze stands for and adds some value? You did that on a small business level at Amex, and you continue to do that. Our job is really thinking about what do people really want and feel at this time, and how can companies harness what they have and package it in a way that's exceptionally relevant for people, and not opportunistic and not tone deaf. And those are the sort of the questions we're getting these last 2 weeks, is like, where can we really help? What is our kind of natural place in this dialogue, if any? And if any, and that's part of our job, is also to call out when there aren't opportunities that are obvious. But I'd say at this time, what our value is at this time, if there's any, is around channeling what real people are feeling in this very moment, which of course are things like, fear and anxiety and uncertainty, but also a tinge of empathy and hope, and togetherness. All of those kind of touchy-feely things, we sort of put words to that and then think, okay, how can companies truly add value to these people in this state of mind?
I think in full transparency, Alain and team are helping us, our American Express team, with some of these ideas that we're developing right now. And I think one of the first steps that helped us in this remote working atmosphere get grounded again was actually going back to our strategy. And when we look at that, brand purpose for how American Express comes to life for businesses, we always talk about our purpose is to help businesses do more business. And that's what really got galvanized during Small Business Saturday, but it helped again now. And I think what that said to me was the insights, the strategy, the purpose we created was timeless. And in a crisis like this, actually helped focus us on things that, let us be our mantra through Zoom meetings like this. If we're being sincerely helpful, then continue on, put it out there. Don't worry about it. If somebody wants to troll us or be a hater, if we believe that it's helpful to give somebody, 3 tips on how to create an engaging meeting, or on the other side of the spectrum, it seems like so long ago, but 14 days ago, what you should do with your travel policies or how to communicate your COVID plans to your employees. If we think it's helpful and it goes back to the core of who we are, then do it. And now we're trying to think of how can we make bigger and better ideas out of that. So, Erin, anything that you've been working on beyond the government partnerships in the last 14 days that you're excited about for Waze?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is sort of piggybacking on sort of like what's been surprising or other things is, again, so we've always had this really sort of our secret special sauce is this amazing community of map editors. There's a quote, actually, we also, in full transparency, once have worked with Sylvain a number of times. And when I got to Waze a few years ago, really helped us recrystallize our strategy. And one of the quotes that they used in one of their, in our final deliverable was one by Margaret Mead, which is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that has." And I think that actually has become a little bit of our underlying mantra at Waze. And so I think it's been amazing to see people's willingness to help out in a time of crisis. Like, I think we all go about our days in very different ways. And a couple examples of that are, we've seen double-digit growth in the number of edits in our map in the past several weeks. And just for context, we on average have more than 50 million a month to begin with. And to do that, we've had editors who have, for one reason or another, again, it's volunteer, stopped editing or haven't edited in the last few months, coming out of the woodworks to help out. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So we're really, in terms of where we're going next, we're trying to figure out how do we leverage this just kind of theme of helpfulness. We recently just participated in the Why Hunger campaign. So in the US alone, we've posted more than 29,000 different locations where we can connect Wazers across the US to places that have free, nutritious food for those facing food insecurity or lack thereof. I think other things that we're excited about is probably sort of what we're going to learn from this. So kind of flipping the gears, we like to think about a world where we can actually talk about this in the past. And so we're trying to figure out, like, what are we learning from a moment in time where the world basically stops moving? So we are pulling a lot of interesting data to package that for various audiences. So whether it's what's happening with like the number of drives or driven kilometers, congestion levels, reduction in carbon emissions, navigating to specific key categories or venues, and what we can learn from that when the world starts moving again, whether it's because, communities are trying to keep emissions down and trying to think of ways to do that, working with different types of public or private sector to figure out traffic patterns and planning and things like that. So I think that creatively, we're trying to figure out how do we use the information we have from when the world stops moving in a way that is, helpful to when the world starts moving again. And then I guess lastly, I would say is my team, the brand and creative organization in particular, and our product marketing and marketing teams and our partnerships teams, we like to think of this moment in time as sort of the silver lining being the gift of time. So we're really trying to think about when the world starts moving again, what can we do to engage and delight and surprise our users that we wouldn't normally have time to do right now? Some of that is capturing interesting user stories, highlighting things that are happening on the map, reimagining some of our UX, reimagining how we actually connect various audience segments around the globe to help them discover sort of features or tools or content that is meaningful and relevant to them when the world starts moving. So I think those are sort of three things. So I'll stop now.
If I could just add to that, I mean, that was great, by the way, Erin. That was, it makes me wonder what the hell am I doing right now? But what I think is great about it is, the way you're measuring the value of what you're doing changes every day based on the appetite people have in that particular moment and the world around them. You have these tools and these capabilities, you've always had them, but somehow their relevance changed, today relative to 14 days ago, relative to maybe years ago when it was founded, and who knows what can happen in the future. And I think that gauge on what is value, in a way there's like a currency, it's almost like a currency exchange, like a value exchange, like what is valuable changes every second, and especially today. And it's really interesting that you're being so proactive in thinking, okay, so what is, what can we do when the world starts moving again? Like what can we provide that's different than what we, day one?
Yeah.
Super cool.
Clayton, what you said too, sorry, about, what you said a few minutes ago about like, small businesses, the spectrum of what they offer in terms of products or services or industry vary a lot. So if they want to offer tips to staying helpful or whatnot, they should, right? Like everyone should do what they think they can. I think what's amazing in that, and what made me think of my answer really, is that I think that we all get really caught up in our day-to-day, right? We all sit in different roles on different teams in different organizations, and all of us have sort of different pressures on that. And not all of them, in fact, most of them don't have us thinking the majority of time about the end users of our product or service, or how they feel, or what they're doing, or what they will do. And so for me, this time is all about that. Like the rest of those things kind of go away in a way. And we all have this great opportunity to really think about who's on the other end of what we're doing and how we can actually make their lives better, easier, more meaningful, or whatever it is that you are offering to the world.
Erin, I think to that point, crises are both clarifying and they are a magic elixir for teamwork. It's crazy how much work through the roof during a crisis like this, even in this unique setting of working from home-ish. It's really remarkable. And with that, I wanted to get into the Q&A in a minute, but while people are dreaming up what questions they might have, we thought we'd try to crystallize our thinking with our kind of top 3 things that we've learned so far in a measly 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll learn as we go along. If you want, I'll kick it off and then we can go from there. These are my top 3 learnings I've had so far. Number 1 is that small budgets are your friend. We do a lot of talking about testing and learning, but I think in this setting, one, unless you're, I guess, working at Zoom, maybe your budget's exploded. I think most of our budgets have decreased a bit. So, finding ideas that are smaller ideas that can go into market quick are good for you to test and learn, but also good for the customer, to Erin's point, to help them now. Second is that I think there's a great opportunity to reinvent your atmosphere of trust again, because I think that's where the best ideas come out of, in this atmosphere where we have, I have right over here my yellow pen. And, you know, this is our life, and there's a great opportunity to be more empathetic, be more human, be more in touch with everybody. And then number three, and we'll see how this goes, but we're talking about taking bigger chances on people inside the company. So looking into people's back resume to see who is an editor, who is a copywriter, who's a photographer, what else can people do? Because we're trying to make a big bet on keeping people employed. And so what else can we have them do in a time where work is moving in significant ways? You know, we aren't doing, sadly, as many live events as we used to do. We're going to do a lot more digital outreach. So moving people to where the work is and taking some chances on people's skill sets.
Yeah.
Alon, what do you have? Let's go to you, and then we'll finish up strong with Erin.
Yeah, I've got a couple. So one is I think a lot about tonality and tone deafness these days. Thinking about what's the right approach and language brands should be using and engaging people. That's something that is always important. But at this day and age, how many of these sorts of emails, claiming solidarity and we're there for you if you need it. And I sent one of those emails. I'm thinking about it on behalf of Sylvain Labs too. That's one big question I have is about tone deafness and tonality. A couple other things. One is the idea that we're all going through sort of a forced reappraisal of our brands and their value. And that's not something that we wanted or we set out to engage, but I think, the real value will emerge at a time like this. And I think that's super important. I think this is the time when purpose, as you said, Clayton, this is where you really prove out your purpose. I think it's interesting. Amex could do a couple of things. It could, distribute, healthcare work, safety materials for healthcare workers. That's one thing they could do. Or they could also help small businesses continue to make business or thrive. And I think, of course, the first one is always we should do, as citizens, we should do as quickly as possible. But that second one, the idea that you're doing something that's tied so close to your purpose, that's super important. And I think those are the key things. When you see companies like LVMH is creating hand sanitizer, which is great, but how does that in any way affirm or echo what their core purpose is? And are there ideas that they could, so those are kind of the top level. There are many more learnings I have. One learning I have, Clayton, is your bedroom is far nicer than my bedroom. And I don't know why. But that's one learning. But Erin, I don't know what you got.
My bedroom is not, which is why we have this blue screen behind me right now. You would also probably see my dog jumping up on me right now, which is, so the blue screen was helpful. Thank you, Zoom. I had three. I think they're no longer original. Thanks, guys. One is, my first really was around, similar to what Clayton said, that constraint can really drive some of the greatest creativity. So, I love what's happening across Waze, whether it's in the product organization or in the ads organization, and the marketing organization. We know that our budgets are going to be very much affected, but what can we do? And how can we go back to our roots of being a scrappy startup, which we like to, we do like to describe us that way. We get caught up in a lot of things. So how can we actually kind of go back to the basics and get really creative within the constraints that we're working in? And then as it relates to the crisis, really try to help in a way that is authentically Waze, I guess a little bit of what Alain was saying. I think that everybody wants to help. But if you don't have something that can really add value to the end user, don't stretch outside of your space to play, and instead just donate money. There's lots of different things that you can do. I think the second thing we talk a lot about is, we're in these organizations, whether it's small, mid-size, or really large, we all have processes that we have to follow, hierarchies, things that tend to become barriers to speed in execution or speed in decision-making. And in a time of crisis, we've seen a lot of that break down. We've seen us move a lot quicker. We've seen a lot more delegation of accountability and ownership and decision-making so that we can move a lot quicker and get things out the door. And I think it's a really important time to take note of all those things. And again, when the world starts moving again and we can put some of this behind us, reassess that. You know what I mean? Maybe, because I think a lot of times processes is put in place for a reason in a moment of time, and then we tend to keep it going, and then we don't remember why. And I think this is a great time to think about what can you do, what can you reevaluate when business gets back to normal, whatever normal is. post-crisis, like, can you continue to move with that speed, and how do you sort of reevaluate those things? And then I think the third thing is just really, we make a huge extra effort to continue to invest in our people, into our culture, into connections. I think this has given us a really interesting time. Every individual, so I have 60 plus people who work in various parts of the globe. And everyone's individual situation is very different. Like, their home situation is different. Some have a lot small kids, some have older relatives they're worried about. Everyone's ability to work is different. And taking all that into consideration, so you really understand people, and then continue to invest in culture. Like, again, most of us choose our roles because we believe in the mission, the people and the connections we make. It turns having just a job into something more meaningful. We've been doing a lot of Zoom or Google Hangout. We do workouts together. We're having our first happy hour, which is a big thing that we do globally, where we're having a mastermind mentalist come and engage all 500 of us around the globe in some way. It'll be interesting, but continue to, like, I would invest in that. I think it's more important now than ever.
That's awesome. Erin, the first question's actually to you. Tells the rider-driver stories you mentioned and how. The question's coming from a place that with traditional production being shut down, we're not going to LA for shoots, or at least we are.
Right.
How are you getting that done?
Sorry, I missed the actual first question.
Yeah, the driver user stories you mentioned earlier.
Oh, got it.
How are you getting those stories published?
So every, I think that you're referring to when we said the data that we're trying to extract and make useful, I'm assuming. If you guys think about it, every country around the globe has entered this crisis in a different time, in a different way, and with a different pace of acceleration. So I think that we are, obviously internally working with all the powers that be so we can aggregate and anonymize those data stories. But looking at the trends at sort of the global level, at the country level, at the state level, if it's the US, and the hyperlocal level, trying to package those stories. But I think the question really gets to the fact that, like, we're seeing a dramatic decrease in driven kilometers. But I think that we all have to remember that some people do still have to move around, and some people do still have to commute to work. But we have that data starting from when crisis started and seeing it go. I think that answers the question, but I'm not sure. But if not, please follow up.
Hey, that's your truth. So I think so. Hey, Alain, from an agency perspective, how do you help clients retain their creative spirit, and how do you make sure that you're part of that process?
Yeah, I mean, as an agency and a consultant, it's a scary time right now. We are small businesses, and budgets, and all agencies, all clients, I think there are very few that are actually thriving right now. We all kind of woke up to this new reality the past couple of weeks and are sort of reeling and trying to figure out what does it mean for us? So that's number one. That's an important thing. First of all, is like, how do we stay in this conversation at a time like this? How do we retain our own livelihood? Mm-hmm. And then two, I think, how can we get our clients to be more mindful of the creative spirit? Is, I think what's happening is all of our clients are beginning to understand that there's sort of unrealized value and assets in the way people are currently working, working from home. Like, they're realizing they can do things that they couldn't do before. They're realizing savings they didn't know existed in other times. And I think our job is to keep that awareness and that epiphany alive. To remind them, well, yes, you remember when we did this quick sprints in 2 days, you can do this again. I don't want to make it well, I'm trying not to talk about you, Clayton, because we did a project for you, but many clients right now have the instinct, okay, let's be scrappy. What can we do quickly? And a lot of agencies don't like those types of briefs, but those are the kind of greatest moments of creativity. And our job is to remind clients, I think, on an ongoing basis, you can always do that. You could always ask, a year from now, you've got 3 days to come up with this limited brief. It's not fun. It's not, you're not giving the creative process room to breathe, perhaps, but you are learning from this moment and potentially getting something out of it. So that's how I see it.
Interesting. I'm going to tie that to another question. Somebody asked about short-term versus long-term. And so the brief Alain was talking about is we gave them that exact brief. We said we have 3 days, and we need to come up with we gave them a pretty solid brief, well written about, here's the problem at hand. I think that's what's nice about times like this. The problems are really clear. How do we engage with our small business owners in a way that's sincerely helpful through content? And we could go into product ideas, service ideas, content ideas, community-based ideas. And, I think it was one of my team's favorite projects this year. They loved working on it with you guys, and the work that came back, and here's how we tried to think about the short-term, long-term was short-term. We thought, back to that mission of helping businesses do more business. What could we do literally in the next 7 days that would help them right now? Because this is when they need to help. Back to the reality of what's going on in the world. That same idea, I'll give you an example. One of the things we're talking about is creating a daily phone newsletter sort of a thing called The Daily that basically is all the news that's fit to print for a small business owner. Everything they need to know about what's going on with government loans, what's going on with the stock market, what's going on in their industry, maybe some inspiration to somebody else's question. How do you stick to a regular work schedule and maintain your creative spirit outside of work? Some tips for how to balance your new working from home life with your kids and homeschooling and board meetings and everything else you have going on. And then the other pile was, let's not kick out ideas that could be useful in 3 months or 6 months, because we don't know how long this is going on. Or how long it will go on. So trying to be cognizant of the short-term needs that our customers truly have right now, like Erin's point about the technology that could help you find the health services you need through Waze today, that needs to go out now. This is when people need it. But if there are things for the later, and what we've tried to do is be ruthless about focusing on just, for us, 2 of each, depends how big your team is. But we're focusing on 2 short-term ideas and 2 long-term ideas, and our teams are hustling and figuring out things like they never did before. So with that, I think we are at time. Erin, Alain, Piers, and the family at PSFK, I can't thank you enough. This was a blast. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. Piers, any closing words?
That's wonderful. I really appreciate that. It's very lively and fun and informative. It's great to see so many people come and join. I guess if people have questions, they can DM you on LinkedIn and things like that, and ask you 100%. Questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. To all 3 of us.
Thanks, all.
On too.
Nice bedroom, Piers.
Super fun, you guys. Thank you so much. Stay healthy.
Right. See you guys. Bye.